Hello, American Pulse and Paranormal viewers. Before we dive into today's spine-chilling adventure, please put on your headphones to fully immerse yourself in this thrilling experience. Join me on this dark night as I embark on my first ever ghost hunting adventure. I recently graduated from the College of Arts and am starting to write my first book, a gripping tale about ghosts. To gather authentic and real material for my story, I decided to undertake this experience myself. The preparations for this night began weeks ago when I contacted my old friend John, a seasoned investigator in paranormal activities. John provided invaluable advice on how to get ready for this adventure. He suggested I wear warm clothes, bring a powerful flashlight, a digital camera, and a high-quality voice recorder. John, with his extensive experience in the field, also warned me to always stay vigilant and cautious. Never investigate alone and make sure you have a clear plan, was his final advice. Inspired by the idea, John decided to join me on this adventure. We entered the old sanatorium with darkness filling the place. Only the beams from our flashlights cut through the pitch black, the wind whistling through the decaying walls, and the echo of our footsteps added to the eerie atmosphere. As fear began to creep in, our curiosity grew stronger. We approached one of the dark wings, where it was said that the spirits of former patients appear. Suddenly, a cold draft passed by, as if someone had just walked beside us. We stood still, slowly turning to see if there was anything behind us, but there was nothing but darkness and silence. Continuing our investigation, we turned on the voice recorder and started asking some questions to the potential spirits. Is there anyone here? Can you give us a sign of your presence? Unexpectedly, a response came. A faint, distorted voice, barely audible, said, "Yes." The experience was both astonishing and terrifying. We had a strong feeling that we were not alone in this place. As we walked through the corridors, we saw shadows moving in the corners and heard faint voices whispering among themselves. Then, at one of the closed doors, I felt something pull me suddenly. I fell to the ground, and strange noises surrounded us. We couldn't see anything, but we felt the presence of something unseen moving around us. As we picked ourselves up, John suggested we head to the basement, where the most intense paranormal activity had been reported. Descending the creaky stairs, the air grew colder, and the feeling of being watched intensified. The basement was a labyrinth of dark, narrow hallways lined with rusted medical equipment and crumbling walls. In one of the rooms, we found an old operating table covered in dust. John decided to set up the camera and leave it recording while we continued our investigation. We moved to another part of the basement where we heard a faint humming sound. It was a chilling, melodic tune that seemed to come from nowhere. We followed the sound, and it led us to a small room with a broken piano. As we approached, the humming stopped, and the room fell silent. Suddenly, the piano keys pressed down by themselves, playing a single eerie note. We both froze, our breath visible in the cold air. John whispered, "Did you see that?" I nodded, my heart pounding. We decided to address the spirit directly. "If you're here, please show yourself," John said, his voice steady, despite the fear in his eyes. To our shock, a misty figure began to materialize in the corner of the room. It was faint and transparent, but unmistakably human-shaped. The figure moved towards us, its form shifting and flickering in the dim light. We both stood rooted to the spot, unable to tear our eyes away. As the figure drew closer, I felt a sudden pressure on my chest, making it hard to breathe. John reached out to touch the apparition, but his hand passed through it, causing it to dissipate into thin air. The room returned to silence, leaving us both shaken and exhilarated. We returned to the room with the camera to review the footage. To our amazement, the camera had captured the entire encounter. The misty figure was clearly visible, moving towards us before disappearing. We knew we had found something extraordinary. Feeling a mix of fear and excitement, we decided to explore one final area of the sanatorium, the attic. Climbing the rickety stairs, we entered a space filled with old furniture and forgotten relics. The air was thick with dust, and the sense of unease was palpable. As we moved through the attic, we heard footsteps behind us. Turning quickly, we saw nothing, but then a child's laughter echoed through the room. It was a haunting, otherworldly sound that sent chills down our spines. We followed the laughter to a corner of the attic, where we found a small, dusty dollhouse. The laughter stopped abruptly as we approached. John reached out to open the dollhouse, revealing miniature furniture and tiny, perfectly preserved dolls. Suddenly, one of the dolls moved. Its head turned to face us, and its eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light. We both gasped, stepping back in shock. The doll's mouth opened, and a whispery voice emerged. "Leave now." The temperature in the attic dropped sharply, and we felt an overwhelming sense of dread. We knew it was time to end our investigation and leave the sanatorium. Gathering our equipment, we hurried down the stairs and out into the cold night air. Once outside, we took a moment to catch our breath and process what had just happened. The events we had experienced were beyond anything we could have imagined. We had gathered incredible evidence, but the sense of fear and awe lingered. As we drove back, John and I discussed the night's events in detail. We couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. The journey home was filled with an uneasy silence, punctuated by occasional glances in the rearview mirror. Back at my apartment, John and I reviewed the footage once more. We noticed something we had missed earlier. In the corner of the frame, just before the misty figure disappeared, there was a shadowy silhouette standing behind us. It was only visible for a split second, but it was enough to send chills down our spines. Over the next few days, strange occurrences began happening around my apartment. Lights flickered, objects moved on their own, and I heard whispers in the middle of the night. It seemed that whatever we had encountered at the sanatorium had followed me home. Determined to find a resolution, John and I decided to consult with a local paranormal expert. The expert, a woman named Dr. Harper, listened intently to our story and reviewed the evidence we had gathered. She confirmed that we had indeed encountered a powerful and malevolent spirit. Dr. Harper suggested performing a cleansing ritual to rid my apartment of the spirit. She provided us with the necessary materials and guided us through the process. The ritual was intense and involved burning sage, reciting incantations, and placing protective talismans around the apartment. As we completed the ritual, the atmosphere in the apartment seemed to lighten, and the strange occurrences gradually ceased. John and I finally felt a sense of relief, knowing that we had successfully dealt with the spirit. The experience had been harrowing, but it had also provided me with invaluable material for my book. The first-hand encounters with the paranormal added an authenticity and depth to my writing that I could never have achieved otherwise. But the lingering feeling of dread and fear remained with us. It was only a few days before the strange events started happening again. Lights began flickering, objects moved by themselves, and I started hearing whispers echoing through the apartment. It was clear that the spirit we encountered at the sanatorium had no intention of leaving us alone. John and I decided to return to the sanatorium to investigate further hidden secrets. We didn't want to leave any questions unanswered. We aimed to discover the reason behind the spirit's presence and how to free it completely. When we arrived at the sanatorium for the second time, the atmosphere was colder, and the fear seemed to creep deeper into our hearts. We decided to head straight to the basement, where we had witnessed the most intense paranormal activity. As we descended the rickety stairs, we began to hear strange noises emanating from the surrounding darkness. We entered the room where we had found the old operating table. Suddenly, the misty figure reappeared, but this time it was clearer and angrier. It began screaming in incomprehensible sounds, and objects around us started moving and breaking. John tried to calm the spirit, saying, "We're here to help. We want to understand why you're here and what makes you angry." Suddenly, the misty figure stopped screaming and showed signs of sorrow. John used the voice recorder once again and asked, "What makes you uneasy? How can we help you?" This time, the response was clearer. "It's not my fault. I'm trapped here." The misty figure slowly explained that it had been a patient in the sanatorium, neglected and brutally treated until it died there. The spirit couldn't move on to the afterlife due to the injustice it had suffered. Then, the spirit pointed to a specific wall in the room. We understood it was trying to guide us to something important. We approached the wall and began examining it until we discovered a hidden door leading to a secret underground crypt. We entered the crypt cautiously, illuminating our path with our flashlights. We found ourselves in a narrow, dark corridor with a suffocating smell. At the end of the corridor, we found a small room containing an old cemetery. Coffins were scattered around, and the walls were covered in strange inscriptions. We noticed a cursed talisman attached to one of the coffins. This talisman seemed to be the source of the spirit's torment and suffering. We realized that breaking the talisman was necessary to free the spirit completely. John used some of the tools we had brought with us, and we began reciting the appropriate incantations to break the talisman. The talisman began to glow and emit a faint sound. Suddenly, the talisman exploded into small pieces. We felt a great relief, as if the room had filled with peace. The spirit reappeared, but this time it was smiling. The spirit began to fade slowly, and we heard it say, "Thank you. You have freed me." We returned to my apartment, feeling the heavy burden had been lifted. We were sure the spirit had been freed and that the strange events had finally stopped. But the following days weren't entirely peaceful. Sometimes I heard faint whispers at night, as if the spirit had left a part of its memory with me. Nevertheless, I felt stronger and more prepared to face future challenges. One night, as I sat reviewing my manuscript, I heard heavy footsteps coming from the living room. I approached slowly and found that objects had been rearranged strangely. On the table, there was a piece of paper written in an unfamiliar hand, containing instructions to search another location within the sanatorium. I took the paper and immediately went to John. We decided to return once more to the sanatorium to uncover any other secrets we might have missed. This time, we were better prepared, bringing more protective gear with us. Upon arriving at the sanatorium, we followed the instructions written on the paper. Those instructions led us to a room on the upper floor that we hadn't entered before. The room was dark and cold, but there was a sense that we were close to uncovering something significant. In the corner of the room, we found an old wooden box. We cautiously opened the box and found a collection of old documents and photographs from the time the sanatorium was in operation. Among the papers, there was a letter explaining that the sanatorium had been used for illegal purposes and that many tormented spirits had not found peace. We realized our mission wasn't over and that more spirits needed our help. We decided to conduct liberation rituals for all the tormented spirits that had suffered in this place. We began reciting incantations in every room of the sanatorium, placing protective talismans in every corner. As we performed the rituals, the strange sounds gradually disappeared, and light returned to the place. We felt we had succeeded in freeing the tormented spirits, and that the sanatorium had finally become a peaceful place. But as we were leaving the sanatorium, we heard a new sound emanating from one of the back corridors. The sound was similar to a child's cry. We decided to go back inside and search for the source of the sound. We approached the source of the sound until we found a small door leading to a closed room. We opened the door and entered the room, finding an old book lying on the floor. The book was locked with a key, and next to it was a letter written in an unclear hand. John began unlocking the key and cautiously opened the book. The pages were filled with drawings and old texts that told the story of a family that lived in the sanatorium before it was converted into a hospital. The story narrated how a child from the family had died under mysterious circumstances. The spirit we were dealing with was the spirit of this child, and the book contained details about how the child died and the torment it endured. We realized that we needed to perform a liberation ritual for the child to ensure its release. We recited the incantations and placed the talismans around the room. The room began to fill with light, and the child's spirit appeared clearly before us. The child's spirit was smiling and happy, and it said in a faint voice, "Thank you." We returned to my apartment once again, feeling the relief and satisfaction that we had completed our mission. The strange events had finally stopped, and I began living my life normally again. This experience, despite all the horror I went through, had given me a deep understanding of spirits and the suffering that might exist in unseen places. I became more connected to my book and more determined to tell true stories based on my personal experience. Thanks to the support and help provided by John, I managed to turn this terrifying experience into a genuine source of inspiration for my literary work. I added the final touches to my book and published it, receiving positive feedback from readers who were moved by the true and authentic details of the story. The team at American Pulse and Paranormal thanks all our viewers for joining us on this frightening journey. Don't forget to subscribe to American Pulse and Paranormal and turn on notifications to stay updated with our latest stories and events. Stay tuned for more of our spine-chilling adventures and join us in the next episode as we explore more supernatural phenomena. You've been a part of this haunting journey, and we truly appreciate your support and encouragement. Until we meet again, keep your courage high and continue exploring the mysterious and unknown.